It's one of the most frustrating things that can happen when you travel. An airline breaks its promise. Getting what you're owed can feel like an impossible fight. But what happens when you have the best in the business in your corner? We're about to open the files of Christopher Elliott and his amazing team at Elliott Advocacy to see what you should do when an airline downgrades you and then refuses to pay up.
And that's the exact question traveler Christopher Long was asking. He knew his rights, he had European law on his side, and still, the airline was telling him a completely different story. So let's get into exactly what happened to him and his husband.
You know, it all started with a simple, straightforward purchase. Christopher and his husband booked premium economy seats for a long flight to Europe. They paid for that extra space and better service. Pretty simple, right?
Well, when they got to the gate for their 8-hour flight from Chicago to Madrid, that promise was completely broken. They were just moved, downgraded to standard economy seats. And anyone who's flown that long knows the difference between those cabins is huge.
Okay, this is where things get really important. For flights going to or from Europe, you, as a passenger, are not just at the mercy of the airline. There are some really strong regulations in place to protect you from this exact kind of thing.
The key to this whole case is a powerful piece of legislation called EC 261. And this isn't just some airline policy. This is European law. And believe me, it is incredibly specific about what an airline has to do when it downgrades a passenger.
And the law really couldn't be clearer. For a long-haul flight like theirs, if you were involuntarily downgraded, the airline must refund 75% of what you paid for that part of your ticket. There's no gray area, there are no real loopholes, it's just the rule.
So Christopher Long, he did everything right. He filed his claim with the airline, Iberia, and he correctly pointed to the law, EC 261. But instead of getting it sorted out, he just got the classic runaround. The airline's first response was a ridiculously low offer. And after that, just silence. Now, Iberia's response wasn't just unfair, it was a gamble. It's a tactic some companies use where they bet that if they make things frustrating enough, you'll eventually just give up and accept a tiny bit of what you're actually owed by law.
Just look at this chart. It shows the gigantic gap between what the law says and what the airline offered. Under EC 261, they were owed a refund of nearly 30,000 miles. Iberia's offer? A measly 3,500. It's just a tiny fraction of what the law demanded.
But wait, the problem was actually even worse. That tiny offer they finally made, it was only for Christopher. His husband, who was sitting right next to him in the exact same downgraded seat, got absolutely nothing.
The airline's reason for this was just baffling. They claimed his husband wasn't eligible for compensation because he didn't have one of their loyalty program accounts. That has nothing to do with EC 261. Your right to compensation is based on having a ticket, not on being a member of a frequent flyer club.
So what in the world do you do when a company just decides to ignore the law? This is where getting advice from an expert like Christopher Elliott is so important. Here are the strategic moves you have to make when you hit that kind of a brick wall.
First, just like Christopher Long did, you have to keep a perfect paper trail of every single email, every letter, every conversation. Second, file a separate individual claim for each person who was affected. And third, if the airline still won't budge, you escalate your case to the national authority that enforces these rules.
And here are the little details that make these steps work. Always cite the specific law, in this case, EC 261. It's a good idea to try escalating to company executives first, and if that doesn't work, you file a formal complaint with the correct regulator. For an airline based in Spain like Iberia, that would be the AESA.
Okay, so let's get back to Christopher Long. He had followed this entire process perfectly. He had the law completely on his side, and he was still getting absolutely nowhere. The airline had just shut everything down. After doing everything he possibly could and hitting that wall, Christopher Long made his final and smartest move. He brought his entire case file to the one team that specializes in breaking these kinds of deadlocks, the incredible consumer advocates at Elliott Advocacy.
As soon as Christopher Elliott's team reached out to Iberia on behalf of the couple, the airline's attitude changed in a heartbeat. They very quickly refunded the full 75% of the miles that were owed to both passengers, exactly what the law required from the very beginning.
And here's the real lesson. The advocates were able to secure this win because the foundation was so solid.
As Christopher Elliott himself pointed out, the passenger's amazing paper trail and his correct citation of the law gave the team all the evidence they needed to win.
This case really shows the power of knowing your rights, keeping perfect records, and, when you need to, bringing in an expert advocate to make sure a big company does what it's legally supposed to. It's a great reminder that sometimes getting what you're owed requires a really powerful voice fighting in your corner.